Sam Raimi's cancelled Spider-Man 4 movie was set to continue the story of Peter Parker, with Tobey Maguire reprising his role. The film was planned to feature John Malkovich as the Vulture. However, creative differences and script issues led to the project's cancellation in January 2010. Now, years later, we've had multiple leaks that really demonstrate just how far into the production they got with this movie. And this includes costume designs for the Vulture character and even a battle animatic of his final fight with Spider-Man that some would say is even better than what we eventually got in the movies years later. At Longbox Comics, we're all about comic book accuracy, and these leaked designs stayed very true to the comic book roots. He had his feathery wings, he had his green colour scheme, and the design was definitely more in line with the original comic book aesthetic. The battle animatic was really cool as well. Even though it's at such an early stage of development, you can really feel how awesome this fight would have been. I think the smaller, leaner suit design enables the Vulture to get more personal with Spider-Man. He actually feels more human and less like a weapon. Also, without a helmet or mask, we get to see all of the emotion from the Vulture's iconic bald head, which would have been great for a master like John Malkovich. The sleek design pays homage to his first appearances, something that surprisingly Stan Lee wasn't actually a fan of. Marvel legend and Vulture co-creator Steve Ditko said that Stan Lee didn't actually like his designs for the Vulture, commenting that he was too thin and gaunt and that he preferred heavy-set villains. But Ditko talked him around, as he explains here. An elephant's bulk can be frightening and destructive, but it is easier to escape from than the lean, fast cheetah. Well, Steve obviously got his way, as you can see from these first few stories that featured the Vulture. One thing I can't find any information on is, why is the Vulture green? I mean, there are literally no green vultures, and the closest bird that I could find to it was a parrot, and I guess that doesn't really have the same kind of ring to it. So this whole situation reminds me so much of the Green Goblin suit. But the big difference here is that the Green Goblin suit was scrapped for something else, whereby the entire movie for the Vulture suit was scrapped. So how close were we to seeing this on our screens? Well, we only had to wait a relatively short 7 years before the Vulture finally did arrive in 2017's Spider-Man Homecoming. In Homecoming, Michael Keaton's Vulture wore an exosuit made from salvaged Chitauri technology, which gave it a more mechanical and industrial look. Where have we heard that one before?
Speak to the devil! Spider!
This suit was designed to be practical and intimidating, which it definitely was. Not sure about practical, but it fit the grounded and tech-heavy style of the MCU. Keaton was brilliant in the role, and I actually feel like he was more menacing than some of the comic book versions of Adrian Toomes. It felt like he could give you a fight even without his suit, whereas in the comic book, the Vulture is a very elderly man. Most of his storylines are based around trying to de-age himself and live forever. But I thought Keaton did really well. The MCU version of the Vulture is the owner of a salvage company that is shut down by the government, and his motivation is driven by economic hardship and a sense of injustice after losing his livelihood. This is a massive change from the comic book Adrian Toomes, who's an electronics engineer and inventor. He turns to a life of crime after discovering that his business partner has been embezzling funds from their company, and is primarily motivated by personal betrayal and revenge, as well as wanting to be young again. So I actually think that Keaton is a better fit for that thuggish owner of a salvage company over what was potentially John Malkovich. But this argument was never about the actor, it's more about the Homecoming suit versus what we saw a sneak peek of from the Spider-Man 4 leaks. Okay, let's face it, this design is ugly. It's clunky, it's sluggish, it's massive, it's made out of scrap metal and is literally a one-man helicarrier. It also hides Keaton's face, which is the same problem that we had with the Green Goblin suit. Willem Dafoe not being able to fully showcase his emotions. And that's something the concept art really stands out for. The Vulture's anger and surprise, it just jumps off the screen, and that's in a cartoon drawing. Imagine what they could have done in the movie. Now, a character called the Tinkerer does give the Vulture suit some upgrades throughout the movie, which is fair enough, but I don't think it really improves the overall costume. I think it actually just enhances its capabilities. If anything, it gets bigger and uglier, and whilst it did give us some cool moments, it's not comic book accurate. And this is Longbox Comics we're talking about here. We don't care about Hollywood. So why was Raimi's Vulture suit overlooked? They could have gone back to that. They had the perfect opportunity to do so. They could have given the classic design its long-awaited appearance and provide a nostalgic and faithful adaptation, but it was not to be. I'm sure there are a lot of great arguments to be had to say that this might have seemed completely out of place in the modern superhero film, potentially coming off as too campy and unrealistic for contemporary audiences. So yeah, we said exactly the same thing about the Green Goblin suit, which was actually 15 years before this, so it's hard to believe that audiences still weren't ready for anything a bit too campy, for a lack of a better word. You see, the thing is, in those 15 years, we'd had some really far out and weird Marvel movies like the Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, the masses could have rejected that. That concept was weird. Listen, I am not for a second suggesting that we put this guy in the cinema, okay? He looks ridiculous.
Oi!
But somewhere in between this and this would have been nice. And I wonder if anything like that already exists out in the world, out in the modern media, as they like to call it. Well, I did some digging, and it does. Releasing in 2018, Spider-Man on PlayStation featured a Vulture suit that was a little tidier in design, a little less clunky and far more sleek, just the way we like it. He retains the green from the comics as well, but with a more sort of armoured and tactical appearance. His suit includes a helmet with a beak-like visor. Now this gave us a version of the Vulture that was both visually striking and practical, whilst also more comic book accurate, which is all we're asking for. There is one big problem. The game came out after the film. So for me, I'd have been totally happy if the Vulture that we'd seen in Spider-Man Homecoming was like a sort of prototype, like the original costume made out of scrap, before he went on to create something a bit more similar to the Insomniac Games costume. I mean, his downfall in the movies, if he was going to do some reflection, his downfall was because he was big and clunky and he couldn't quite catch Spider-Man, who's obviously very quick and nimble and, you know, jumping all over the place. I think if Toomes does some self-reflection, he may, in future movies, squash his suit down just a tad. Get rid of those massive fans. I mean, yeah, we get it. You've taken scrap from alien technology and shield, battle-damaged vehicles. But we don't want to see that. We want comic book accurate. We just want you to have feathers, basically. Now, unfortunately, I just don't think that they were ever even considering it. And if you need further proof, then look no further than the Morbius end credits, where Toomes once again appears and he's in the same clunky suit as before. And I think maybe it's even bigger. Like they just thought, yeah, let's make him bigger. But whilst we're on the subject, can we just take a moment to ask what the hell is going on with the acting in these scenes?
Thanks for meeting me, Doc. I've been reading about you.
I'm listening.
I'm not sure how I got here. Has to do with Spider-Man, I think.
The writing here is so bad. Keaton's voice acting is so poor. Are you honestly telling me that Sony mismanaged a 20-second end of credits scene featuring two very capable actors, award-winning actors? It just makes no sense. I mean, I have to give a shout out to this comment. I like to imagine Michael Keaton in his hotel room recording these lines on a phone and sending to Sony from his bed. I mean, that is just a perfect explanation. That's exactly what happened. Now, ultimately, we know that Raimi's vision for the Vulture was left on the cutting room floor. Sad face. So it remains to be seen if we'll ever get a comic book accurate Vulture in the movies. That's a wrap on today's episode. What do you think of the leaked Vulture costume? Would you have liked to see John Malkovich take on the role? Let us know in the comments below. Please don't forget to subscribe, to like, to hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.